For 46 years, I have been a student of prophecy, particularly Daniel and Revelation. I blame those 46 years on Seventh-day Adventists. In 1956, 55, 56, I read a book entitled The Great Controversy, 600 plus pages, paperback, no pictures, no images, just cold, hard ink on white paper. And I saw the book in a Seventh-day Adventist grade school on a shelf by itself. The Great Controversy. I wonder what that's about. I was not an Adventist. Now, a lot of preachers and a lot of evangelists and a lot of Bible workers and some relatives had been working 24/7 to talk me into being an Adventist. But I hadn't found anything that would advance me in my Christian experience from my Baptist background, Presbyterian background. I hadn't found anything that said, you need to know this and you need to do this. So I picked this book up on the shelf, the only book on the shelf, and I took it home. You have to understand, I'm a teenager. I took it home and I read it in 3 days and nights. 600 and whatever pages, 680 pages or thereabouts. That book brought conviction to my life, my mind, my heart. As a matter of fact, the day after I finished reading the book, the local pastor who had pulled every trick out of his hat he could to get me into the Adventist faith and the Adventist church and so forth, came walking through the school, and I got up from my desk and I walked out the door and I said, "Elder, I've made up my mind I want to be baptized." The guy went speechless. Finally he said, "You've made up your mind?" I said, "Yes, I don't need Bible studies." Okay. That was my introduction, an Adventist introduction to Daniel and Revelation. It's a long story even before that time in my life, but the images in Daniel of terrible beasts and terrible horns and all these kinds of things just gripped me in my imagination. What is this all about? Why would God put this kind of stuff in the Bible? And it's been a growing, progressive experience for 40 plus years. For 30 to 36 years, I have been urging friends like you from coast to coast and from beyond the coast and beyond and beyond and beyond. Hundreds of thousands of folk, I've said, the book of Daniel is for our day. Now you would think that would be good news, but there are a lot of people who are turned off by that. And here's why: because the church had its own definition, its own interpretation of what these images were all about. And I had to study and I had to grow and I had to pray and I had to try and I had to go down this road and sketch it out and back up and say, that doesn't work. There's something wrong here. And several years ago, actually 30 plus years ago, in Southern California on a Sabbath with 12 to 1,500 people present, I said, I want to open the book of Daniel, present tense, with you. And I got about 20, 30 minutes into the first presentation of the day, and 300 to 500 of the 1,200 plus got up and walked out. It was a shocking experience. I thought they would want to know what Daniel had to do with our day. But there are preconceived ideas and opinions. It's not unique to Adventists. People are resistant to change. I'm not. Now, if you believe that, human beings are by nature resistant to change. Why? Because we come into this world crying, screaming, kicking, and virtually our entire lives are spent trying to get security. We buy insurance. We make sure we eat the right food. We do all the things to make sure we are on solid ground. And then some preacher shows up and said, "Oh, you got it backward." I have said this many times, but I want to say it under different circumstances and maybe different words with you for a few moments here. The book of Daniel is about the future. Prophecy is about things that are yet to come. We, as a people, as a church, as a movement, are teaching prophecy, history as prophecy. We're finding all the answers back yonder. And if you convince the church and the church members that it's all done, then there's no excitement left. There's nothing left to discover. A few months ago, Judy was going through the first stages and all of these things that have happened in the last 6 to 8 months. Judy's going through the first stages, and I'm home. I'm not spending any time in the office. I'm home. And in between, bring me water, bring me my pill, bring whatever in between, I'm rereading Daniel. And I saw some things that I had never seen before. And you have to understand, I can pretty well repeat the book from memory. That's nice, that's good. But there are levels of understanding. I'm not going to say interpretation. There are levels of understanding. And I began to see some things that I had never seen before. As many times as I had gone through it, over it, past it, around it, could read it to you, could tell it to you from memory, I never saw some of the things that we're going to talk about here today. Once I saw it, instead of having a calming effect on my mind, it troubled me. Well, this is one of the things I discovered right here. Right here. Now I'm going to tell you this is not about politics. This is about prophecy. You must understand that President Trump has rewritten the laws regarding someone in my position being able to discuss these things now without fear of the government stepping in and saying, "You're a nonprofit. We own you. You can't say that. We're shutting you down." I've got about 6 weeks of freedom so far. I don't want to talk about politics. I want to talk about prophecy. And I want to put some of these things together in such a way that when I began to see them, I wouldn't voice everything I was seeing. It was almost more than I could handle, much less trying to bounce it off of somebody else. But there was something about Daniel chapter 4 that grabbed me. You're this head of gold. And I had just been reading some of the internet gossip about Trump having his hair dyed. And the rumors are, I don't know how true or not, doesn't matter, but the rumors are on some occasions he had actual gold flakes put into his hair as well. That may be just fake news. I don't know. Let's see if this works. These are the words of Jesus. Every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. You and I need to get America in the crosshairs. We need to understand that there has never been a nation, there has never been an empire, there has never been a time in human history like this time, like this nation. We are the great nation. You're the head of gold. You're the great tree. You are. It began to become clear to me that God would not talk about Babylon and Medo-Persia and all of these historical nations and people and events in the past and come to the end of time and say nothing about the most powerful nation, the greatest wealth, the greatest, and by the way, the only truly Protestant nation on the planet. And it's not a Protestant nation anymore, but at least we have some, and under this man's tutelage, we're able to say it freely now. No exceptions. I don't need to tell you that this nation is divided. It is divided. It is passionately and violently divided. It is financially, physically divided. There are things that are coming across the evening news that just bring tears to my eyes. I'm watching the death of my nation. I'm watching the demise of the most powerful nation and people ever in history. And it is coming apart quickly. And it doesn't matter who says or tries to calm the waters. They're boiling. Every kingdom. Who said this? Come on. How many times did he say it? When something is doubled, that has significance. More so when Jesus is speaking. I'm bringing you to chapter 4 of Daniel and verse 17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones. We're going to parse this. We're going to take it apart in a moment. To the intent that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whomsoever he will and sets up over it the basest of men. It was reading that, and it's repeated 4 times in Daniel 4. It was reading that I said, that's Donald Trump. If I ever saw or heard, that's Donald Trump. So let's parse this. This matter. What is this matter? First of all, are you aware who wrote Daniel chapter 4? Nebuchadnezzar. Was he a great Christian? Was he a good man? I mean, he's the one that surrounded Jerusalem, tore down the walls, destroyed Solomon's glorious temple, took all the gold back to his house, and made slaves out of 1.5 million to 2 million people. I don't think of Nebuchadnezzar in pleasant terms. And yet, of all the people God is going to favor with some knowledge, some understanding of the future, he chooses Nebuchadnezzar. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. This matter is about the green tree, the great tree. And we're going to discover it's about the great tree and the guy who thinks he's gold from head to foot. This matter is by the decree of the watchers. Are you familiar with this term? These are the timekeepers. These are the clock watchers. The guys who came looking for Jesus from the east. They're watchers. We have seen. We watch the heavens. And all the things that we have heard about through our ancestors are taking place. Where is he that is to be born King of the Jews? There's a decree of the watchers. They're not down here like the wise men. They're up there. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the demand or command by the word of the holy ones. Tell me who's holy.
Jesus is Father.
Is this plural or singular?
Plural.
See, we read, but we just go too quickly through these things. The demand or command is the command of the holy ones. Follow me. To the intent, this is the purpose, to the intent that the living may know. Why does it address the living?
People living at that time.
It's the people living at this time. At this time, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men. Now, we have to back up just a little bit right here. The disciples said, Master, teach us how to pray. Okay, this is how you pray. Our Father, which art in heaven. We're talking about down here, kingdom of men. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. From where? Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. Where? Here we are. This is a pronouncement from heaven that the prayer of Jesus is going to be answered in time. The Most High rules not simply up there, but in the kingdom of men. Does it appear to you that God is always in control down here? Be honest. Now, God is going to exercise His righteous choice, and He's going to give it to whomsoever He will. I think there's probably several million people in this country who don't want Nebuchadnezzar to run the country. Now that's what we got. That's who we got, because God says, I'm going to put the basest of men in control. You wait till we dig this one out. He's going to set up over it the basest of men. Way back. 1977, 78, first invitation that came. Would you come talk to us about prophecy? This is what I drew on the board. One umbrella with a starting point and an ending point, and finally decided this is 30, 40 years ago, finally decided that this is the 3.5 years spoken of in Daniel and Revelation. It's repeated and repeated and repeated. And so I fleshed it out like this, that this starts with the National Sunday Law. Now, I did not choose that. That's what occurred to me as a moving point, a transition point in end-time prophecy. Adventist version. I put National Sunday Law. 3.5 years and Christ will return. Now I'm going to be very honest and candid with you. If you get up in front of a bunch of Adventists, I don't care if they're on the other side of the world, and you say National Sunday Law and Second Coming, you've got the crowd. And the crowds were there. And the crowds listened. I'll tell you how it went. I have a file in my office of hand-drawn crayon, sometimes chalk, but crayon images. And virtually every one, I have a thick file of these, virtually every one of them was handed to me in a seminar from New York to Sydney, Australia, to you name it, was handed to me at the end of the day by a 5-year-old child. I drew this, and every one of these, without exception, is some guy standing up front with his hands up and a chalkboard in the background. 5 years of age. Crowds would come and they would bring children. No, that's a no, 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 no. We don't want crying babies. They might have begun crying early on, but things went silent. And people would sit for hours and hours and hours. They're not listening to a person. They're listening to a message that has something about it that strikes the heart, strikes the mind, and says, listen, pay attention. Now that's where I started, and things change. About 20 years ago, maybe 25 now, with more study, I decided that there would be 7 last years. And this was upsetting to some folk. You can understand why. I thought the world was going to end in 3.5 years, and now you're telling me it's 7. 7 last years, and of course, this made changes in things. So I'm going to back up, and I want you to see this. There was a transition. We went from 3.5 years to the possibility of 7 last years, including the 3.5 years. But we have to change the formula. And so instead of a National Sunday Law, we discovered that the Moed, do you know what the Moed are? What that means? It's Hebrew. It means times and seasons. It means watchers, the stuff of watchers. The Moed. We discovered that it has something to do with the daily to be taken away. And of course, the end is the end when Jesus comes to receive his own. We discovered that there was 1,260 days, 1,290 days, 3.5 years, 40 and 2 months. And what does all this mean? $18, 24 months ago, 6, 8, 10 months ago, we extended this again. Daniel chapter 4. And I added 12 months. Oh, my phone rang and rang. It still rings. I just don't understand how you get that. Well, let's talk about it. 12 months is how long? 1 year, 7 years. Ooh, that sounds like a presidential arrangement. More recently, I have concluded that the 12 months breaks, where Jesus introduces the beginning of sorrows. See, the disciples came to him and they said, we're so proud of the temple. Look at it. It is glowing like a precious stone in the sun. Jesus says, it's coming down. Oh, no. Yes, it's coming down. And it will not just be an ordinary day when it comes down. Every stone you see is coming down, not one left standing atop another. So they said, this must be the end of the world. How can we know when this is going to be? Do you remember what Jesus said in answer to their question? Be careful, be aware. This is what you're going to see. This is what you're going to hear. There's going to be deceptions aplenty. There's going to be war and rumors of war. There's going to be famine. There's going to be pestilence, which is in the Greek plagues or plagues. There's going to be rampant deadly diseases, famine, pestilence. Nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Now Matthew and Mark say, and there shall be earthquakes in diverse places. Luke went around and asked everybody he could find who had heard these things and repeated these things. And he said, I'm going to add a word. Great earthquakes. Not simply earthquakes, but great earthquakes. In many places, different places. So let's get on with this, and I want to remind you of Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2 is the first dream that was given to I mean, there are all kinds of saints that God could be informing. I mean, he could send you and me dreams. And what's this Nebuchadnezzar bit all about? So Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. Daniel is already captive and led away to Babylon with his friends. And he is chosen by God and by the king to bring about an interpretation of this dream. And in verse 28 of Daniel chapter 2, this is what Daniel says, O king, live forever. Could not the soothsayers, magicians, and astrologers show the king the dream? But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets and maketh known to the king what shall be in 330 BC. Are you listening? Just the language, just the context